Hello, and welcome to my podcast, Good Grief. My name is Dr. Christine Malone, and in this podcast, we talk about trauma, tragedy, and survival. In each episode, I will interview someone that has gone through grief in some way, and we will discuss the impact it has had on their life. By sharing these stories, we hope that others won't feel alone should they be going through similar situations. Enjoy. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. My guest is going to talk to us about some healthcare issues that he's been through throughout his life and how he's overcome those to become something very different than he was during the days when he was struggling with paralysis and so on. So, guest, if you'd like to introduce yourself and just kind of start out with, what is the healthcare issue and when did it first surface?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that, Dr. Christine. But first off, I want to say thank you for providing a platform where people can listen and engage and maybe relate to what we're going to discuss today. If you don't offer this platform, there's probably people that we don't reach and help. So I'm so grateful for that. And I read about your history. And if the listeners don't know about that, they should, because you have been through a lot yourself and have come out on the other side. So I'm
Yeah,
really appreciative
yeah.
for that.
And those are the stories I love to share. So I'm so glad you were able to join me.
Yes, thank you. My name is John Petrelli. I've been a fitness trainer for 30 years. Before I was ever a fitness trainer, I had some challenges in my childhood, but I was able to overcome those and become, uh, look, for 30 years, I've worked with all different walks of life. And I think the thing that resonates with people is the fact that I've worked with professional athletes, I've worked with celebrities, I've worked with Grammy Award winning artists. But at the end of the day, I've worked with human beings, and we all have common threads, no matter what our title is. And it's that humanity, that common thread that I so enjoy seeing people progress and overcome their challenges. And that's who I am, I guess, in a nutshell, right there.
Awesome. So I know from your story that one of your first real big healthcare episodes happened when you were a teenager. So tell us a bit about that, kind of what happened and
Sure.
where that led you.
So absolutely. So what you're referencing is in my teen years, I had a lot of issues with anger, fear, anxiety that turned into violence. But I think I should actually wind back a little bit to give perspective of why I believe and why I know now as a 51-year-old adult of those things happening. And in my story, Dr. Christine, I never want to put blame on anybody else. I made decisions that were my decisions with the best tools I had at the time, and it was nobody else's fault for anything I did, and I take full responsibility for that. I fully believe that we do the best we can with the tools we have, and that includes people that I interacted with and myself at that point. Um, my parents, I should go all the way back to that. My parents were both born in Italy. I'm first generation Italian American, and my mom, God bless her, she is 4'11" of absolute energy and cooking ability. If you stop by my house for lunch, you would leave 11 and a half pounds heavier. There's no doubt to that. And
Love
she
it.
is very passionate. She's saved my life. She's one of my best friends. And my dad was a great man too. But once again, we have the tools that we have that we're born with. My dad was born, or not born with, that we obtain along the way. My dad was born in 1921 during the Depression, and he didn't have a father. In a sense, he found out as a teenager that his dad had a whole second family on the side, and it kind of started to shape his life without a father in his life. And he went into the military at 18, and he fought in World War II, he fought in Korea, and he fought in Vietnam. And back in those days, we didn't really talk about, or he never did, or it was never labeled PTSD, but I'm sure he had those challenges. And also generationally, maybe culturally, coming from Italy, there were certain emotions that were never talked about or expressed man to man. And those were maybe things that were saw as a weakness, like caring, love, compassion. And I don't blame my dad. He did the best he had. I can only imagine the horrors that he saw in
Right.
warfare, and he never really liked to talk about it. But it created communication challenges for us, and I didn't have the ability at that point in my life to really navigate these waters, and he didn't. And things that were like, he never called me son, or he never said I love you until I was 21 years old, and I was seeking these things from my father and not knowing how to express that. It created a lot of frustration.
Mhm.
And it also, that frustration led to anger. And when I became in my teen years, that anger, unfortunately, Dr. Christine, led to violence. And um, boy, I wish I can go back and change the clock of how those things happened, but I can't. And they're the thread of who I am now, right? I have more compassion because of it.
Yeah.
But there was one incident at 18 years old, and I had learning disabilities. It wasn't classified at that time, but it was dyslexia, as I found out later in years. And so I never felt good enough in school. I never felt like I was good enough for my father or my parents. I just didn't live up to the mark. I didn't have the ability to communicate. And when I was 18, a lot of these things culminated into one incident where I struck someone in a split second instant. I didn't think about it. They were going to attack my friend, and I was on the side and I kicked this person in the face. And unfortunately, it created major damage where they were knocked out and their head hit the back of a curb when they fell to the ground.
Mm.
And in an instant, I went from potentially going to college to potentially killing someone.
Mm.
And I had to deal with all the ramifications of that. And at that point in my life, I was very self-centered. It was all about me and other people's reasons of why I couldn't achieve something, or I couldn't take responsibility for my inadequacies. And here's someone laying on the ground, and shamefully at one moment, I was actually proud that that happened. It quickly turned to being embarrassed and being shameful and being fearful. But here I am, I have someone laying on the ground. They may not be resuscitated. The police officers, I should give you all the details. So I kick this person, they fall to the ground, they're unconscious. I'm in a big crowd of people, and somebody grabs me from behind, and I go to confront that individual. And unbeknownst to me, it is an undercover police officer,
Mm.
and he had put a handcuff on my right wrist. And now, without thinking, I go to take a punch at what I think somebody is attacking me. And needless to say, police officers rightly don't take kindly to
Yeah,
18-year-old
no,
punks trying to attack them.
I don't
And
think
so,
they do.
no, they don't. And so now here I am. I have handcuffs on. I'm slammed to the ground. I've just assaulted somebody, and I have to go through the court system. Thank God that this person was revived. Thank God that they were able to be resuscitated. And I had to manage my way through the court system, and I had to manage my way through the rest of my life going, I made a definitive decision. I wish I could tell you that was my bottom. It wasn't. I had to have other incidents happen to me, but it was a starting point for me to decide that I didn't want to take from society anymore, that I needed to find a way to contribute, that I needed to find a way to become useful and helpful to people. And that at the age of 18, 19 years old is when I started getting the idea to become a fitness trainer. And I go, how do I take this and turn it into something positive?
Right.
And that was my one of my bottoms for me, and turning my life around. And I cannot take that moment back. And so I have to say that has made me who I am today, to understand that these are things I don't want to do, and hopefully give someone that may be dealing with those things the similar, to find some point of reference to go, this individual was there, and I see myself in this place, and I too can climb out of this, and I too can find a way to be caring and giving, as opposed to taking and selfish.
Yeah. So 18 is I'm admiring you right now a lot for the fact that you got there at 18. How that occurred to you at 18 is beyond me. I've had teenagers and they don't always think clearly.
Mhm.
So, what do you think it was that made that click in your head to go, I want to do something different. This is not who I want to be. I want to do this something else. I mean, what caused that in your young 18-year-old brain?
That's a great question. Thank you. So, for years prior to this, I had in my mind so much anger and frustration from my lack of ability to communicate, that I believed that I was going to end up dead or in jail. And now my beliefs were coming to reality. Here I am sitting in the back of a police car, handcuffed, and I go, I am right where I thought I was going to be. So I had a little insight to go, I need to change my thoughts. I need to change what I believe. I needed to change my peer group. And not that it was my friend's fault. It was that I couldn't handle the dynamic of our relationships and those influences to say, no, this is not for me or whatever. And so I started isolating myself because I couldn't act appropriately in that peer group. I started isolating myself and I started finding myself putting out a lot of energy. For me, thank God it was something positive. I started going to the gym
Mhm.
at all hours of the day to channel my energy into something positive.
Yeah, no, perfect. That makes perfect sense. Like I said, I know the teenage brain isn't always thinking
Oh,
that.
it is not. And mine was not. I had maybe a moment of clarity that was needed.
Yeah, yeah. Usually when I hear that, it's always like, oh, so and so stepped in and told me this, and it's the mentor, the uncle, whatever it might be, that kind of shows people, this is not the path you want to be on. But yeah, no, that is impressive. So then you get to adulthood, and I know you have had issues with autoimmune disease that has caused you some issues. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2021, we go from when I was 18 at 20, 21 years old, I become a fitness trainer in an industry that wasn't even relevant at the time. There was like one national test. And I really, to put a little bit of this in there, if people are finding trouble finding their path, it could be the very next thing you do. And I thought that I was going to be helping people, and I was in some capacity, but as they opened up their lives, if they opened up their intimacy to me, they took me on this journey, and their wellness became my healing wellness. And my soul started to heal as I started contributing and helping people. And I didn't have this ego to maintain about being a tough guy or this image of my exterior. And I was able to start living in my passion. And as I started living in my passion for 30 years of being a trainer, I started having people come into my life that were mentors that did give me advice. And maybe it took me a while to listen to some of that advice on many occasions, but it was there resonating, waiting for me for when I was ready. And I had a lot of trials and tribulations in those 30 years. There was times where I slept on the floor and didn't have, you know, $50 to my name and was eating cans of tuna fish. And I'm grateful for all of that, because in 2021, when I came down with a rare autoimmune disorder called GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, if I didn't get arrested at 20, if I didn't sleep on floors, if I didn't have so many trials, I may not have been in a position to handle the biggest trial of my life, which was getting paralyzed. And I can tell you the details of that story if you'd like.
Sure, please.
So I had an instance where my feet started going numb. And now maybe it's male ego, maybe just my personal ego, maybe it's machismo, but I was going to work every day and I didn't tell my dear wife about it because I just figured I could work through it. And I'm going to work 8 to 10 hours a day. And then that numbness started ascending up my legs to my shins, and my hands started going numb. And still, I didn't say anything. So after about a week and a half of that, I woke up one morning and my vision started getting so blurry that I couldn't read my phone, and I lost my urinary stream. And
Wow.
so I had to break down and confess to my wife and go, baby, this
Something.
is going on.
Yeah.
And thank God she is the yin to my yang. My wife, Cheyenne, thank God for her, because I'm like, after I get home from work today, maybe we should go to the doctor. And she's like, honey, child, there is no work today.
I love it. Yeah.
She's like, we're going to the doctor.
Now, yeah.
We're going now. And by the time we even got to urgent care, I was having trouble walking. And I was like a AA battery that was just getting drained of all my energy. So we go to urgent care and the doctors start giving me an examination, and I end up fainting in that examination. And I'm not one to faint at all. So I go unconscious, they bring me back and they start running a series of tests. And the doctor goes to me, look, I don't want to scare you, but I think you could have a rare autoimmune disorder. We don't have the ability to test for that here, but I'm going to call the emergency room in the hospital down the road. It's 1 mile down the road. They have to give you a spinal tap, and they're going to pull the fluid from your spine and check the proteins to see if you either have MS or GBS, which I had never heard of, Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Mm.
So we head there. They put me in a wheelchair at this point because I can no longer walk on my own. They bring me into emergency. They put me on the table, they pulled the fluid out of my spine, and they said, it's going to be about an hour before we get these results. You can just relax and we're going to find out what's going on. So I take a 20-minute nap. And when I wake up, I can no longer feel, I'm paralyzed from my waist to my toes. And so the doctor goes, look, if this ascends up into your heart and lungs, we're going to have to put you on life support. And it is happening very rapidly. So they put me in the wheelchair, they put me in the elevator, and they bring me up to the ICU. And as I'm going to the ICU, I make a definitive decision that is 180 degrees from what 18-year-old John Petrelli would have made. I said, I'm never going to complain. I don't know what I have. But as I look down the corridor, as they push me down the corridor, I see people in different states of distress. There's someone that had an automobile accident. There's an elderly person that is trying to fight COVID. And I know that some of those people are not going to probably make it out of the ICU. And I know that people have it worse than I do. So I say that I'm going to, in my mind, it is not going to do me any good to complain about anything that is going on here. So I make that definitive decision not to complain. They wheel me down to the ICU. And I know you've been in healthcare a long time. And I know you probably haven't heard anybody talk as long as I have without taking a breath. So they wheel me down and I make three choices that I really believe helped me. And I don't ever want to discredit Western medicine because my doctors and nurses were amazing and they helped me tremendously. But for me, I needed to do some things. And I couldn't deal with the sounds of the ICU because there's sounds of distress. There's machinery beeping. When my dad passed away of cancer, I spent a month in the hospital with him, and I have some bad memories from that. So for me, I made a decision to fill that room with positive vibrations. And for me, one of my clients, I don't want to name drop here, but it's a reality, was Ziggy Marley for 20 years. His dad, Bob Marley. So I play Bob Marley 24/7 in the ICU because it's filling my mind with things that bring me joy.
Right.
I would love to talk to you about this next point, because I think you have some perspective, but I have a mission to change the food in the hospital system because we are at our weakest point. We're looking to heal on a cellular level. In addition, the people that are giving us care, our caregivers, are being nourished. This particular cafeteria had French fries and chicken fingers and Snickers bars. And I go, I can't heal myself on a cellular level with that. And I had lost my ability to swallow, so I was on pureed food. And my wife said, I am going home to make you organic pureed foods, and I'm going to bring them to you every day for your meals. So now I have positive vibration in the form of music. I have nourishment on a cellular level. We're getting pureed organic foods. And then the last thing I said is I have to keep my mind occupied because it's easy for me to potentially go to a dark place. And I meditated, breathed, and prayed 24/7, envisioning my body healing itself and asking my body to heal itself because I didn't want to give my mind time to go, why is this happening? Looking up at the ceiling at 2:00 in the morning, whatever it may be. And so those are three things I did.
So at some point they had to come in and give you a diagnosis, I'm
Oh,
guessing.
yeah.
Okay.
So they did diagnose, the test came back and I had Guillain-Barré syndrome.
And then what was the prognosis? What did they tell you was the likelihood of living with this disease?
Sure. So they said most people will recover from this depending, every case is different. It's bio individuality. How did you come through the door? If you're older and you have some other conditions that would prohibit you from recovering, maybe diabetes, obesity, it would be tougher. Some people never recover from it. And we can't tell you exactly what's going to happen here. So there was a lot of vagueness. And in all honesty, some of the physicians, because I was there for a while, that I dealt with were like, you're the first person I've ever dealt with GBS, or some of the nurses. And so they put me on a thing called IVIG, immunoglobulin, and they started administering that through an IV. And I was on that, I think, for 3 or 4 days. And I went completely paralyzed over the course of 10 days where I could only move my eyeballs at one point.
Yeah, that's terrifying. So is uh whatever what you said it was, is that pretty
Mhm.
much the treatment for this, or is there other treatments, or what is?
There are other treatments. They will pull your own stem cells out, and they'll pull your plasma out, and they will clean it and put it in a centrifuge and then put it back in. I didn't do that. What I did is they harvest that from other people, and that's what that is in that immunoglobulin.
Okay.
And my body was basically attacking itself and attacking the myelin sheath on my nerves and eating it away because it thought it was a foreign entity. So they had to make my body stop attacking itself.
Yeah, hence the words autoimmune. Yes, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the body doesn't understand it's attacking itself, which is interesting as we think about yeah, how healthcare works and so on. So I'm impressed, by the way, your ability to keep a positive attitude during that time. I'm thinking of myself if I was in that space, and suddenly all I could do was move my eyes. I don't know that I would be so able to keep a positive attitude. So good on you to do that. And yes, I
Thank you.
completely agree with you on hospital food. It's been a tyrant of mine for a long time. So totally different topic, maybe a different book, something like that. But
Yep.
yes, I completely agree. We don't feed hit people healthily, and we are healthy, and we don't. Yeah, it's outsourced, and what it's all about money. Anyway, we'll get away from that. Get away from that. So right now, so how did you've been a fitness coach now for how many years?
30 plus years.
30+ years. Okay. So at some point in time, you decided to write a book. So tell us a bit about your book, kind of what made you want to write it, and who's your demographic and so on.
Absolutely. So I think this is important for people to understand. I'm a firm believer that, look, I mentioned briefly that I have dyslexia. I am so bad at spelling that when I type something, spell check is like, we have no idea what the hell you're trying to say here. We can't help you. But when I lost my physicality, and my whole identity has been defined by my physicality for 30 years,
Yeah.
right? All these things that I've done, I had to contact my mentality and use it to navigate not only the ICU, but how do I go ahead and proceed in life here? Because my physicality, there was no guarantee it would come back. I
Right.
left the ICU in a wheelchair. I had to learn how to rewalk. At some point, I could only move this finger.
Mm.
So I had to go into my mentality, and I started thinking the opposite once again of when I was 18 of, it's why is this happening? I go, how can I possibly help people that may go through a similar experience? And I was listening to an audio book when I gave Bob Marley like an hour off in the hospital. And I said, I have this story from the time I was young, through my childhood, through being on international tours with an artist, traveling from going from a town of 2,000 people to making it in Hollywood as one of the most sought after trainers. And how do I make people that may be in a juvenile home or something, or dealing with a disease, that they can find some useful information? So I got the inspiration to write a book, not knowing if it would ever go anywhere, not knowing how to write a book, but going, man, they told me I will not be at work for 3 to 4 months. So how do I do something positive? And
Mm.
that's where I got the inspiration. And I actually contacted the person from the audiobook that I heard, and they were gracious enough to give me some information. They put me in touch with their editor, and I started putting stuff on a keyboard. I had some notes written down before, and I emailed it over to an amazing guy named Scott Burr, who was an editor on this other book. And he goes, look, I just came off of writing a book, and I promised my girlfriend that I was going to take some time off. There's no way I can do another book. He goes, but send me over something that you wrote. And I email it over to him. I got all the time in the world now. I can barely move my fingers. I'm sitting in front of a keyboard, and he gets back to me immediately. And he goes, can you send me something else? And so I send him something else. And he calls me back. He says, damn it. He goes, I promised I wasn't going to go to work, but I really love your story and
Yeah.
go on this journey with you. And so we went to write this book, really to take demons off of my chest, to help people. It's called Confessions of a Hollywood Trainer. What it is, of my life. It's just my life story. And we put a book, and it's such a freak of nature. I want people to understand. I'm not telling you, my book became a #1 bestseller instantly on Amazon. And I don't say that because I want you to go, oh, look how amazing I am or whatever. I want you to understand that if somebody that was arrested, that has dyslexia, that was paralyzed can do this. Imagine what you're capable of. Imagine how much more than me you can do. We all have amazing greatness inside of us, and it doesn't take an act of paralyzation to have it be accessed. It did for me, but your dream can be accessed immediately. If you want it bad enough, you're willing to put in the work and you surround yourself with some people that will hold you accountable and lift you up. Everything is possible. I have a better chance of winning the lotto twice than writing a book and having it be successful. And I want everybody to know, no matter what dark place you're in, no matter where you are in your life, you can turn it around. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There are people that will help you, and your greatness is an inch away from being revealed.
Yeah. So in hearing you, I mean, to me, I think it all starts with attitude and belief. It's got to be, I have to believe that that's true, and I have to, know how to get there and so on. I can't just say, oh yeah, no, this guy did it. But for me, it's like, oh no, I'm older and I'm more disabled and I'm whatever. Kind of have that thought, the first part being, that believe in yourself and think about your goals. I mean, I've told many people in my life, where do you want to go? And then, how do you get there? Right. Rather than, oh, I'm low down, I'm a here. Well, you are, yes, but how can you get there is a totally different story. So I think that's part of it, is the attitude and the belief, really, and pulling ourselves out of ourselves. I think it's extremely easy to go into self-pity, and to think, oh, poor me. Why do I deserve this? Bad things are happening. I'm a good person. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that in my life. And yet it's like, you can wallow there, but what's that going to get you? Right? I mean, it's not going to get you out of that space and into a place where you can not only feel better about yourself, but even go the further step like you've done and help other people. So that, I think, is kind of the starting point, is the belief system in the head, to realize you can do it. It's not me just telling you, but you have to believe it, that you can do it. Otherwise, I don't know how you're going to get there. So yeah, so that is impressive. I love that. So you do the fitness coach thing, and I know when you talked about the book, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I just recently published my autobiography, and I cannot tell you how healing it was for me to put some of that stuff down. It was like I hadn't thought about some of these things in years, and I thought, no, I'm all good, everything's good, but it brought up issues that I was like, oh, I actually haven't quite figured out how to put that one to rest. So it was kind of nice. And so I realized, and I hear people who have read my book, where they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't been through this, but I can understand that, and so on. And it really is, for me, very validating, right? It's like, okay, well, good. I'm glad that it's helping someone else. So that helping other people is genuinely something to be completely admired about. So yeah. So your story. So how long were you in, when with the hospitalization, and you got the only work of the finger? How long did that whole thing go on for?
So I was in the ICU in isolation for 10 days, and then I got wheelchaired out of there, and then I started physical therapy immediately. And Dr. Lou, I am all in if I do anything. And I did physical therapy 7 days a week. I did 5 days with a physical therapist and 2 on my own. And I was trying to focus, as you articulated so greatly earlier, about we wallow in our mentality and everything. There was so much for me that I could have focused on, and I would have in past years, of what I didn't have, but I only focused on what I could do. And at one point it was just moving my finger, and I didn't focus on the fact that I couldn't move 9 other fingers, but I was going to move this finger until I could move the next one and the next one. And so I did physical therapy 7 days a week. And there was many a times where I tried to walk to the couch in a walker and I collapsed in the middle of the night, but I got back up and I said, okay, at least at this point I can take 1 or 2 steps, and I can build upon that. I feel like sometimes we look at things that are so big and they could be overwhelming. And I tried to make it as small as possible, down to the digit of my finger, down to my toe. And I go, I'm going to start there and I'm going to grow from there, as opposed to focusing on this big thing, like, how am I possibly going to get back? And just through consistency and determination and patience with myself, and being as kind to myself as I would be to you,
Yeah.
I was able to do that.
And I'm guessing support. You mentioned your wife, but I'm guessing there was a lot of support around you as well through that time.
Years. Yeah, that's so true. And I believe our support system we need tremendously. And it doesn't mean they all have to agree with me, because Lord knows not everybody agrees with me, but I have learned to listen to other people's opinions. Like my wife said, go to the hospital now, not after work. And it's yeah, I had a great support system.
One of the things I've learned is that we don't always, I mean, your wife, wonderful, but we don't always know who that support person's going to be. And I've been surprised in my life where it's like somebody that's a neighbor that I barely know who's been there for me, who steps up and helps with something. And you're like, wow, that's, and then some of my very best friends, maybe not as supportive and so on. So I think it's important to also stretch out and think, what else might who else might I reach out to who might know this thing about whatever it is. So um, expanding the horizons, I guess is how I would phrase that sort of thing. So yeah, we don't always, not all of us have a supportive person in our family is what I'm trying to say. And that doesn't mean you won't have one. You just find someone else maybe who's out there that you don't even expect.
Right. And then how about what an impactful person your neighbor was for you that you didn't even expect? And so for us to just do a kind gesture to someone
Yes.
and how
Oh,
it reverberates, right?
oh my goodness. You are completely speaking to, I completely, yes. I have a neighbor here where I'm at now who has suffered with a lot of issues, mental health issues. And I didn't even know his last name, but I reached out and offered him some resources that he might go to. And I thought, you don't know me from Adam and I don't know you, but I know you're struggling and we're humans and I'm here to help in any way I can. And if that works, great. If it doesn't, well, at least I tried the best I can do. So I think there's that too with people. So when did you finally gain back your full physical abilities after that episode?
Yeah. Great question. So I would say I was able to go back to, I graduated from the wheelchair to the walker to the cane within 3 months.
Mhm.
And then I was able to go back to work at 4 months, but I wasn't 100%. And I would say there's still things that I have that may never get to be 100%. And I'm okay with that. Like I have numbness in my feet and my toes. My memory is definitely been compromised and my eyesight was compromised from that. I wear reading glasses now. I think I definitely gained some extra gray hairs from the experience, but I can't dwell on these things. It just is a reminder of how grateful I should be that all the other things are working. And I say that maybe God left my toes this way and they're numb and everything just to give me a reminder of where I've
Remind you,
walked.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So is there danger that this is going to happen to you again? Or I mean, how does that work with this illness?
Yeah. So they said some of the major ways that you can get this GBS is through a vaccination, through a bacterial infection, or a viral infection can do it too. And I had almost all those things happen. I had a bacterial infection ahead of time. We don't know how I got it, but
Mhm.
I probably can't get any vaccinations or anytime soon. It's not worth the risk for me to do that. Um, and they said that I have maybe a slightly greater risk to having a reoccurrence that somebody else does, but I can't remember the statistics. It's one in so many million or 100,000s. And I hope not to hit the lotto again on it.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you've
yeah,
learned so much and you've taught so much to other people throughout these events, which is again so incredibly remarkable. Um, yeah, so the book, you've got the book, and people who are reading your book, I mean, who are the people who are wanting to buy the book? I mean, are they like the people who want to
they
hear
got to
about
be crazy. I don't know who would want to read it. First off, they got to be crazy people out there. Who I think it will help is there's so many trials and tribulations that we don't have time to touch on here that I went through in my life. And I think that there is maybe I didn't put enough, or maybe there is not enough focus on mental health. And
Oh,
I think it's
oh
so
yeah,
important.
oh
And
yeah.
when I lost my physicality, my mentality helped me, right? Thank God I was able to do that. But someone that would read my book is someone that had challenges in their life, that's gone through some trials or in through some trials. And I try to give tools in there that may or may not help you, right? They helped me, and hopefully you can steal some of these tools from me, put them in your tool belt and go, yes, that one's great. Or maybe that didn't work for me, or whatever it may be. There is a Hollywood element into it where I went and I had my perception of what that was. And then I found out in reality of what, so there's an instance, and I couldn't give names because of legal reasons, but there's like in my book, it's called Mr. Action Hero. And I
Okay.
grew up watching this individual and he was my hero. And he always beat the villains and saved the damsel in distress. And then I find out that he's not such a great guy. And I have like 3 interactions with him. And I almost have to call 18-year-old John Petrelli up to fight this individual and I'm like, are you kidding me? But I also found out that we're all human. We all need love. We need to contribute no matter what our title is. And so there's so many crazy journeys in there. I was in Alaska. I got thrown out of a boat in Alaskan frigid waters and had to save myself, isolated in Alaska. I got dropped off in British Columbia, Canada on a reality show. I was on the first reality show ever, and I had to live out there for 14 days and survive. So there's a lot of craziness that is in there. And it's just my trials, and we all have our trials. And if you want some inspiration from something from a small farm town individual that had a lot of challenges in my life, hopefully you can get some tools out of there and enjoy it.
Great. Well, we're definitely going to link to your book when we post this podcast, so people can find it and take a look and pick it up and read it. I will personally be doing that right after we're done here. So there's that. So, John, you've been amazing to talk to. Is there anything else you'd like to share with anyone before we go?
Yes, ma'am, if that's possible. I have an absolute affinity for caregivers, for our law enforcement, our military, our veterans. I get worked up here and start crying. But I donate a certain amount of my time every year. And if you know someone that's in need that falls within those categories, I can't do it for everybody, but please contact me. I'll do as much as I can. I will give free advice. I'll have a phone call. I'll send free copies of my book, whatever it takes, because in our time of need, they are there for us. And so I want to be there for them when they need it.
Yeah, no, that you're right on base with me too. I have a very soft spot for people who give without expecting things in return, and that's definitely that demographic you just talked about. So yeah, no, that's wonderful. So John, thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciated hearing your story, and again, can't wait to pick up your book and read about it. So
Thank you so much.
All right, well, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Christine.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Good Grief. To hear more about my personal story, please pick up a copy of my book, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival, available in paperback, Kindle, and Audible via Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other online book retailers.